speaking on school mental health and the need of mental health program and services in the modern day world. Since a while, people have been talking about how psychiatry and psychological sciences have grown in the world. Yet the data reports that 4 in every 5 children who require any kind of psychiatric help never reach a doctor. Data also reports that over the past 2 decades, suicides have become the second largest cause of death in children in our part of the world. Suicides in adolescents have increased 4 times in the last 2 decades. Almost 50% of all people who have any kind of a psychiatric illness essentially have it starting between the 10 to 14 mark. This is the fact of life. And yet we talk in terms of how we've advanced and grown and we are giving better education, better services, better programs. We did a study a few years back with a lot of school children in mainstream India. And what we found out was that 50% of cause of stress in school in children was essentially exams, academics, pressure, so on and so forth. We also found out that a generation which is so much hooked up on social networking apparently has so many friends on their social networking sites. 30% or so reported experiencing a lot of loneliness in spite of having so many friends online. We also found out that 25% of them, which is 1 in every 4 adolescent student going in school, shared with us that once in the last 6 months at least, they've had a thought that maybe their families would be better off without them. But the other part of this data, which was even more interesting, was that when we asked them, who are your role models, an open-ended question, the topmost answers were obviously not modern-day politicians, and that's a relief. Because I actually believe that if they'll start imitating how some of our leaders behave in the parliament, and if they behave in the same way in the classroom, then it will be a very scary experience for all of us. Was parents and family. So parents and family being their key role models. So what this means is, even though we believe that generational gaps and distances have happened, fact remains that it's still about relatedness and attachment. And if we are able to do that, then a lot of aspect of the psychological problems that school students experience will be significantly taken care of. Over the last few years, we've had social changes, cultural changes, a very intrusive media, family dynamics, economic dynamics, all have changed. So what has happened is that for students, they have a whole bunch of changes happening, but there aren't enough people who are talking in terms of how to give them skills. So when you don't give them skills, this reality of how they are struggling actually becomes more. So what we need to understand collectively as a society, that students are going through their stresses. This is a very important phase of life where they are going to essentially form their own identity, their own self. These are formative years. So what we need to give them is the right amount of skills. Skills so that they can effectively deal and move forward in their lives, which is why this is all about. They have all sorts of vectors. Parents are a vector, school is a vector, community, media, society at large, everybody is acting on them in various ways. If we don't give them the skills to filter and choose and then move forward, they will continue to struggle. So what we propose here, I'll be talking about very basic things which we can do collectively, which can make a big difference in the way children today are dealing in schools. People have been talking about life skills for a very long time. Give this skill. If we leave it to some of our educationists, they'll give life skills even as homework. You never know that if we might end up asking children to write an essay of how to manage stress management, and then start giving them marks and making that into another point of stress, starting another cycle of stress. Life skills is not merely telling them 3 tips, 4 tips, 5 tips. We believe life skills need to be in a form that they can be applied in an application format in day-to-day life. So what we've been doing is, we are doing this program for the past decade that we call as the Pro-Social Peer Moderator Program. Pro means good, social is the peer network, the peer moderator, moderator is a person who learns, this person learns, trains other children. So students come to us, we train them on some skills, they go back to their schools, train other junior children, because again, peer-to-peer learning in school-age children is far better than maybe a psychiatrist or a teacher or an adult coming and preaching them and saying do this and don't do this. Because adults end up being too prescriptive with children. We propose that what you could do is, especially for people from background of schools, focus on aggression management, study and exam skills, because like I said, 50% of cause of stress is still exams and stress. Risk behavior, which includes bullying, underage driving, substance abuse, media literacy, about which I'll talk about again. And this year, we've started adding one more topic, which is gender sensitization. For anybody with any kind of a heart or a soul would have been appalled by what has been happening in our society in the last few months. And the thing is, we wake up from some kind of a hibernation. We get surprised, we get shocked, we get angry, we react, and then we sleep over until the cycle just continues. So I think that maybe talking to children makes a big difference, because maybe they'll be willing to change. Somehow, a psychiatrist after a few years of practice probably becomes a bit cynical, that when you talk to adults, you feel maybe these are not going to change. So a lot of hope comes to children, to school children, that if we can actually help them have some kind of a gender empathy, it can make a big difference, because maybe they won't grow up like how we have. One of the key changes in the last decade has been the intrusiveness of media. Studies report that about 7,000 media messages any individual is exposed to every day. Studies show that eating disorders and media exposure has a direct correlation. Studies also show that there is increased aggression, especially in early school, preschool, primary school, and middle schools, with the exposure to aggression. Studies show that television viewing can be related to depression. Studies show that when children are exposed to various kinds of glamorous presentations of smoking through entertainment industry, children tend to pick that up. This is a fact. Studies also show that sometimes when you report suicides in a way that it should not be reported, children can have what is known as Werther's syndrome or copycat suicides, where they end up copying it because they identify with that person. This is where media is. But studies also show that media has a very strong impact on children, because they tend to look for somebody they can look up to, somebody they can hero worship of. And there lies the responsibility of the media. So when we talk in terms of what schools can do, and they can have a pro-social peer moderator program, I think media has a role to play, especially the entertainment industry as well. Merely saying that it is for entertainment only does not take away the responsibility of deciding what can be shown to a child and what can't be shown to a child. Anything which is in the public domain has to have a sense of responsibility. Media needs to look at, so there are guidelines worldwide, yeah? There are guidelines on how to report abuse, how to report rape, how to talk about risk behavior in children. There are guidelines on reporting of substance use. There are guidelines on various aspects. I think these guidelines are there so that we give a better atmosphere of viewing to children. But I feel one of the other things is we need to make children more media literate. And media literacy is a movement that all of us need to starting with media. Media needs to utilize role models that children look up to, right time, right way, in a consistent manner, so that these children would essentially be able to filter and learn something positive. So one role is to work on the pro-social peer moderator to give children skills. Another vector correction would be of media. Third in my mind is going to be of how do we work with our basic academic system. So you have preschools, schools, then there's a whole chaos that happens in between of several exams. Now they are talking about an open book, thank God, but still they do not understand exactly how open book needs to be. It needs to be a lot more open than what they are thinking it should be. Good, they thought in terms of more internal evaluation, but it needs to go beyond that. But the most important aspect is transition from school to college needs to be a smooth transition, and college to vocation needs to be another smooth transition. We have these, let's say, speed breakers that are being created, which essentially break the development path, a natural development of a modern day child. So from preschool to school, from school to senior school, the board exams, and then a whole bunch of entrance exams, the sheer mushrooming almost in a weed-like manner of the number of tuition classes, the pressures, the extra classes, I mean, we are almost dehumanizing the experience of exams, making a monster out of exams, making a monster of our academic system, where the child almost feels throttled, scared, and not knowing what to do. Walk into a 12th class in today's time and ask children what do they want to do, and they'll say, we are waiting for result. Now that in itself is such an illogical thing. If a 17-year-old, 18-year-old is not sure what course or vocation to take, and if that's going to depend on one cross-sectional examination, then there's a problem. If only a certain percentage makes a difference, that's a problem. If only a certain combination of subjects, almost like corn and cola in a film theatre, has to be there, that's a problem. So what one needs to understand is that we need to create a transition which is smooth. And the reason why this doesn't happen is because parent-teacher associations are very weak. Parents and teacher associations need to be strong enough and involved in policy making and education. Educationists and government agencies need to invest, and in my mind take 20% time out from academics and put that 20% time into developing individuals to become adults. The moment you start doing that, things like sports and extracurricular and personality, life skills automatically find their own place. And that has to be the meaning of education. The next vector to this, which needs to be on the corrective side, is, in my opinion, the role that mental health practitioners need to play in our country. We have about 300% shortage of psychiatrists, psychologists in our country. So what that means is no matter what we want, there won't be somebody available per school. That's not how it works. So what you do is you create some kind of a partnership where there is a role where there is an experts adopt schools and areas and give them the support system that is required to be able to filter, screen, early identify, early manage, so that children who just fall back in the line because they might be having some deficits are also taken care of. And once we start making these roles, all of us put together, it will be there. But in the end, what I actually strongly believe in is that over the years, somewhere, our ability to relate to each other has come down. We stand by and let road traffic accidents happen. We stand by and do not react when somebody is hurting, molesting, abusing somebody. We stand by when corporal punishment continues. Somewhere our relatedness from a person to person has probably gone down. And that's where how we relate with children needs to be looked into. Children cannot be treated as secondary citizens. We cannot be having a development and a growth and yet continue to have staggering figures of children struggling and suffering, and we yet talk in terms of mainstreaming, whereas a large percentile of the mainstream continues to struggle. So if we are to look within, we need to genuinely look within and see, do we want a world that we have, or do we want a world better than what we have? If it is a world that is to be better than what we have, then collectively we need to change. The 50 years down would say that the number of psychological problems in children has substantially come down. Thank you.